I feel about it is that it is the only form of art that, in a way, America has created and given to the world in this century or in the past few centuries, let's say. But I think it's more of a revival in a different form of what went on in classical music before. In other words, in the 17th century, there was a great deal of improvisation in classical music, as you know. And because of the fact that there were no electrical recording techniques or any way to permanize or to catch music and to record it, the music was written so that it could be permanized that way. And so slowly but surely, the writing of the music and the interpreters of the written music gave way to more and more interpretation and more cerebral composition and less improvisation, until finally improvisation became a lost art in classical music, and we have only the composer and the interpreter. So the composer even very seldom improvised, or didn't have to, say around the late 1800s or the turn of the century. But jazz, in a way, has resurrected that process, which I call the jazz process. Now, jazz, as we tend to look at it, is a style. But I feel that jazz is not so much a style as a process of making music. It's the process of making music, making 1 minute's music in 1 minute's time. Whereas when you compose, you can make 1 minute's music and take 3 months to compose 1 minute's music. Now, that's the only basic difference. Now, it so happens that because of historical circumstances and where jazz was born or whatever came up in Mississippi and American music and the American culture and all, we think of jazz as a stylistic medium now, which in a way it is. But I think we must remember that in an absolute sense, jazz is more of a certain creative process of spontaneity than a style. Therefore, you might say that Chopin or Bach or Mozart or whoever improvised music, that is, was able to make music of the moment, was in a sense playing jazz. And we leave style out of it, and that's the way I feel about it in an absolute sense. I would like to say that one of the most thrilling things about jazz as a spontaneous creative process is, for instance, in recording it and later hearing oneself and being so surprised and at what has happened. And it might be interesting to note that any good teacher of composition, that is like serious classical music sort of composition, will always tell a student that the composition should sound as if it's improvised. It should have the spontaneous quality. So actually, the art of music is the art of speaking with this spontaneous quality. And that is the thrilling part of jazz, in that it has more or less resurrected the art of spontaneous creative music. Again, it hasn't been heard from since, what, the 17th century or the 18th century in classical music.
Well, as a teacher,